Live, welcome and greetings, all of you, my dear lovely family, friends, fellow Africans here in the continent, and to all of you who are in the diaspora. We are going live in this public lecture where we're going to hear our Pan-Africanist talking about the importance of united Africa. So we are trying to champion a united Africa because we know that if we don't unite Africa, we'll continue to punch below her weight. And that's why we are trying to call all Africans and to address the issue of unity. Unity is very important. And without unity, dear lovely family, friends, fellow Africans, we are going nowhere. So join with me in this live streaming. And if you have something to share with us, please do so through the comment section. Share your views, share your thoughts, what we can do as Africans to see a united Africa is happening in our lifetime.
African Union, President of Angola, Your Excellency, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and our host, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, Your Excellency, outgoing Chairperson of the African Union and President of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, Your Majesties, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government of the African Union, and First Ladies present, Your Excellency, the President of Palestinian Authority, Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellency Moussa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellencies, former Heads of State and Heads of Government of the African Union, distinguished delegates, ambassadors, and guests all. I stand here clothed in the spirit of the battles of Adwa, conscious that it was that battle within 24 hours that shook the confidence of the powers of Europe, but inspired the people of Africa and the children of the African diaspora that good would prevail over evil and light over darkness, but only in the context of our unity. I stand here conscious that it was that battle that forged the beginnings of Pan-Africanism that eventually led to the movement for independence and the destruction of the colonial powers to give us not full development and power, but the first steps of political independence. I stand here conscious and buffeted by the dreams and works of the great Pan-African pioneers, and conscious that as a children of the Caribbean, we have long dreamt for the moment of unity with our brothers and sisters of Africa, a division that was secured by those whose success and survival depended on separation of us rather than on the ability for us to act as one common people. Our relationship, you can say, was embryonic, but regrettably, as long as it has been and as related as we have been, it has been sporadic. And it is up to us as the children of independent states to determine whether the history of separation shall be our future or whether the spirit of Adwa can be our inspiration to confront the challenges of a new world. Yes, I stand here as a daughter of Africa. I stand here equally as a proud Prime Minister of Barbados, a country which is the first landmass that you reach after you leave this great continent of Africa. A country which became a hub for the wrong reasons. But today I come to Ethiopia to share with you in the Africa Union that we can be a hub now for the right reasons between our two peoples. I stand here as the proud chairman of CARICOM, the Caribbean community, recognizing that as a member of the 6th region of Africa, we have come to reclaim our Atlantic destiny. We have come to ensure that the very futures of our people are different and will not once again be determined by a middleman who will ensure that the Middle Passage is one that sees our people at the bottom of the ocean's floor of the Atlantic or in the fields of the plantations of the Caribbean, but instead that it will be a future that sees our people, hears our people, feels our people, and that will determine in future that it is we who shall forge the manner in which we cooperate, integrate, and invest, rather than simply being victims of a past history. I stand here equally as the chair of the V20, 70 countries across the world that are climate vulnerable, 40% of whom come from this great continent of Africa, recognizing that it is only through unity that we can confront the existential crisis of our generation, that of the climate crisis. The Secretary General of the United Nations has already laid out, ably so, many of the iniquities that we continue to face in spite of political independence. It was His Majesty Haile Selassie who popularized and told us that there shall be no first-class or second-class citizens, words popularized by Bob Marley, learnt by all of our people without appropriately recognizing the context in which he spoke and the mission which must be ours for generations until it is achieved. He told us that there would be war if there were first-class and second-class citizens. He told us that there would be war if the color of our skin was more significant than the color of our eyes. And we see here in the continent the continued descent into conflicts born out of ethnicity differences, born out of a mad grab for resources, not invariably for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others who seek to use our people as pawns in the determination of their own future. But we stand here as proud people, and we have enough among ourselves to know the difference between right and wrong, and to forge a future that is not for a few, but for the many. Indeed, as the world confronts the climate crisis, it is the poorest of the poor who remain the most vulnerable to floods and droughts and hurricanes. It is the poorest of the poor, and soon to be the middle of the middle, who will no longer be able to access insurance and therefore to be able to forge ahead with development if we do not make changes. We have examples of a partnership that have worked for us, not just from the spirit of Adwa and the conquest and the rise of the Pan-Africanist movement in our history, but within recent times. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it was the African Union, under the leadership then of President Ramaphosa, and with the assistance of Dr. Tedros of the WHO, that recognized that the Caribbean, which was being marginalized by denial of access to basic therapeutics, basic medical equipment, to vaccines, that we should not be left as pariahs on the global landscape, but that our brothers and sisters in Africa would bring us through the Africa Medical Supplies platform to be able to ensure that we could secure for our own people It was with the solidarity of many of you in the African Union that the Bridgetown Initiative has been able to take root and to make a case for a more modern and a fairer system that allows us to be able to access finance and to be able to put in place measures that allow us to be able to pause our repayment of debt during the period of necessity for rebuilding after horrific climatic events. We have seen how partnership helps us. We do not need any more evidence. What is required of us is to lead the way to peace, to prosperity, and to justice. And the reparations which we call for the international community to be able to recognize, first and foremost, with that which we ask from each of our children. Say sorry. Say sorry. And mean it. And after, recognize that the future of the world is not possible without the stability of Africa and its diaspora. For as long as hypocrisy and double standards remain, it will be impossible to secure stability and peace in any nation across the earth. The reparations that we call for, beyond sorry, must be for fair access and development and compensation, because we each started the journey of independence with a chronic deficit. A deficit of resources, a deficit of fairness, a deficit of opportunity. And it is up to us, many of us in the second and third generation of independence, to be able to frame out fairly in a mature conversation what those reparations must look like if we are to attain justice and to inspire the young people of this world that good must always prevail over evil. But it is not only the reparations that we ask from the international community, because we ourselves must repair the damage that was foisted on us. The notion that transit visas, begging for them, must be the lot of our people in order to move across this world cannot be something that gives us satisfaction. To go east and to go west, we are first forced to go north. It is not right. And it is not beyond the heads of government and heads of state, of the region, of the Caribbean community, and of the continent of Africa, to determine that we must stop talking about, but simply do what is necessary to build the air bridges and sea bridges to guarantee that we control our destiny. I ask us to reflect on this because it is this simple act, apart from our music and our culture and our food, that will guarantee that it is not simply heads of government and heads of state that will meet in Accra or Bridgetown, but it is ordinary people who will be able to trade and to move from the closest point of Dakar to the closest point of Bridgetown, to be able to open up the opportunities that technically ought to be available not just simply through the Africa Free Trade Area or the CARICOM single market and economy, but through the combined opportunities provided by both. I ask us equally to recognize that in an era where AI is threatening to redefine what humanity can do and even if we can survive, that it is not ours to be the victims once again of technology as we were with gunpowder, but it is for us to help shape the future of the world, because more often than not it is Africa and its people who have brought the humanizing forces to bear on civilization. And if we are to be the cradle of civilization, then we are to be the protectors of people and planet, of humanity, as we go forward. And some watching on may say, how? And I say, how not? How not does a continent that has 40% of the world's minerals not be in charge of helping to secure the destiny and stability of the planet? How not does the numbers of our two communities, who constitute a third of the world's states, not act in singular purpose to forge the kind of world that we want and to be able to ensure that the institutions that deny access to us to hear our voices as reflective of the continent and of the small island developing states of the world. How do we not secure that admission, which is not only just, but a moral imperative if the world is to have stability in this 21st century? My friends, I ask you, how do we not secure this victory when 1 in every 5 and possibly 1 in every 4 persons on the planet will come from this continent and its diaspora? Those who lead today have a moral imperative, not just to our citizens in our own countries, but above all else, to unity. The spirit of Adwa demands of us that we recognize that even in the face of the greatest technology being foisted upon us, that we can rise and win if we act in unity. This has been a message not given by our generation alone, but by previous generations of African and Caribbean leaders. But we ask ourselves, why does it elude us? And the answer comes not from outside, but only from within. When I speak of the USA with affection, I do not only want to speak of that which is known in the Americas. I want to speak about that which ought to have been possible if the 1884 Berlin talks did not take place. The possibility of the United States of Africa, which is as diverse as India, which is as diverse as China in terms of ethnicity and language and religion, but which is entirely possible if we see not ourselves first, but we see the unity of ourselves together. This may be the cry of a naive and romantic daughter of Africa. But if that is the case, I prefer to die being a naive and romantic daughter of Africa than one who is cynical and one who is daunted by the actions and power of others. We know what it is to stand in unity with you to fight apartheid and to fight for the liberation of the peoples of Africa. For when President Castro stood to send people from his own country to southern Africa to free your people, it was in my own country that the planes refueled, ensuring that that battle was possible. And when 100 years ago, almost, a Barbadian man and woman left our nation and left the United States to come here, Arnold and Mignon Ford, he wrote the anthem and lyrics of the anthem of the United Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, and his wife dared to establish a co-educational school here in Ethiopia, ensuring that boys and girls could receive education in a time and at a time when war was dominating the global landscape. They chose to see light rather than darkness. I ask us today, in tangible terms, that will allow our people to travel, that will allow us to pool our investments to ensure that the people of Africa not be denied the electricity that is so necessary as a platform for participation in the new world. I ask us not only to pool that investment, but to also ensure that we pool our voices, because there is too much division in this world today. There is too much war and there is too much conflict. And we know what precipitates and causes that. If we leave Addis Ababa with the commitment that the world is not going to be safe without a prosperous and stable Africa, then we understand what is the moral imperatives we must undertake in each of our countries to secure that unity of purpose and to secure ultimately the saving of the people and planet. I ask you today to recognize that, and I thank Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for agreeing that the first in-face summit of CARICOM and the Africa Union should take place here in Addis Ababa on the 7th of September of this year of our Lord. By that simple act, we build on the inaugural summit which took place virtually in 2021. But more importantly, we seek to regularize and to establish as a permanent point of interaction the unity of which I speak and call for. And I ask you as I leave this podium to recognize that we too in the Caribbean want to see you. Indeed, in my own country in Barbados, we will celebrate the Caribbean Festival of Arts, the 15th Carifesta, from August 22nd to August 31st. And we do so not only asking for those from Cuba and Bahamas in the north, to Venezuela, to Suriname and Guyana in the south, to Belize in the west and the Eastern Caribbean to come together to express our commitment to each other creatively through food and fashion and music and dance and art and sculpture, and talk. Talk of philosophy, talk of religion, talk of who we are, talk of the future. I ask us to recognize that we celebrate this year our resilience, and that we do so not only asking the people of the Caribbean to come, but the people from whom we came here in Africa, in India, in China, and the continent to which we went, in particular in Central America and Latin America. This is our moment to show the world that we were not simply apostrophes to the history and the modern history of humanity, but that truly we are the ones who can level the playing field and to create the opportunities that will allow the world to see people, hear people, and feel people, and to value the planet and its biodiversity at the very time when it is greatest in crisis. Let us remove the scars of history and be firm craftsmen of our fate, recognizing that the only people who can stop us now are we but ourselves. We have to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery and to build the future that our people want of us, and to give them that pride that is theirs. And we must do so in the spirit and with the results of ADWA. Thank you.
Yes, what a speech from Mia Motre, the Prime Minister of Barbados. So now we are going to hear from the President and Commander-in-Chief of Economic Freedom Fighters in South Africa, Mr. Julius Selo Malema. When he was in Ghana, he provided one of his powerful speech, the speech of unity, the speech of love, the speech of hope. So let us now move to next speaker, the President and Commander-in-Chief of Economic Freedom Fighters, Mr. Julius Selo Malema from South Africa.
Movements, Nkrumah developed connections with African American artists, writers, and all kinds of people who were found in diaspora. That's why a lot of African Americans found resonance and found Ghana to be a place they can identify with as their home. So Nkrumah's idea has always been that black people who are found everywhere must always be in solidarity with each other, because they are the most hated people all over the world. It doesn't matter where you find them. If you find a black person in China, give them love, because you must know they are hated. If you find a black person in the US or even in Russia, you must embrace one another irrespective of the countries you come from, because you are both hated. It doesn't matter how rich you are, it doesn't matter how educated you are, as long as you are an African, they treat you like a reject. That's why the unity of Africans and Pan-Africanism does not only mean those who are found in Africa. It means everybody else that looks African, who's found everywhere in the corner of the world, because those are the people who have been robbed of their humankind. We also know that this country is the one that leads with successful succession, which are peaceful. Of course, it experienced a bit of difficulty at some point, but since then, Ghana became the most celebrated democracy. But the democracy of Ghana is threatened by corruption, a corruption that made sure that Ghana does not pay its international debt. As a result, today, Ghana is unable to self-determine because everything else is dictated to Ghana by IMF and the World Bank, because the current leadership failed to honor their obligation. It's a threat to a wonderful democracy anyway, because it's eating on the moral fiber of democratic dispensation. We must never ever celebrate anyone who is corrupt or seek to defend the corrupt individuals, irrespective of our political affiliation. Those who are stealing from the public purse now, they are stealing from the future. That's why they are unable to pay the debt now, and they will not be able to pay the debt in future. And it is you, the youth of Africa, that are going to inherit the debt, and you will not be able to develop your own countries. There is a tendency in the African continent of the youth defending the old corrupt because they give them the little money now and they forget the future. If you value yourself, if you value the future of this continent, you must stand tall and unashamedly fight corruption everywhere where it raises its ugly head. Don't care who says what. You must always speak truth to power. It doesn't matter who gets offended. The truth remains the truth, whether you are standing, whether you are sitting, whether you are sleeping, the truth will never change. And one thing you must know is that when you tell the truth to the powers that be, they may pretend now that they do not hear what you are saying. But when they are sleeping alone, their conscience speaks to them, and they must answer the question, is he or she telling the truth? And if the answer is yes, you have achieved your mission. They will never know they are corrupt until someone tells them on their faces that you are for yourself, you are for your family, you are for friends, you are for the politically connected, and you are not for our continent, because our continent is about the unity of African people that is based on economic ownership of the means of production. I want to say this today here, that xenophobic people are people who suffer from self-hate. Because when you love yourself, you will never hate another person. A black person who looks like you should serve as a mirror to you. When you look at that black person, you must see yourself. And therefore, you cannot say the people from Ivory Coast are not needed here in Ghana. They are taking our jobs and our opportunities, because there is no Ivory Coast, there is no Ghana. There is no Nigeria, there is no South Africa. There is no Liberia, there is no Botswana. There is Africa. Because we never determined these artificial borders. Some people went to sit somewhere and decided to divide us. And they did that with a pen and took away our brains, because there is no wall. In other places there is no fence, yet we see the wall and the fence that doesn't exist. We are unable to break these imaginary artificial borders because our boss told us that we are divided. We are being treated like mad people. where you've got a gate without a fence. All of you, when you want to exit to Ivory Coast, you go to a border, and that border is a gate. But when you check on the side of the gate, there is no fence. Our people are living together. So Africa must stop behaving like a drunken master who goes through a gate in a yard that doesn't have a fence. It will never have a fence because we are one thing. We marry into each other's communities and families. We go to each other's activities. We share cultures. And I know for sure that the people of Ghana dance to Amapiano. So why would they think that they are not South Africans, and why South Africans will think that they are not Ghanaians? It's only an imagination that was instilled in our heads by our colonial masters. We have to make sure that as a new generation, we do away with this. We, as a younger generation of Africa, we must not seek to get rid of the old in a disparate manner to a point where we destroy institutional memory. We must always make sure that the old coexist with the young, but the old must be prepared to pass the wisdom to the young ones. For because at some point, the old must die for the new to emerge. And it's not me calling for the killing of the elderly African leadership. Nature dictates that the old at some point must die for the new to emerge. But this new must be prepared to learn from the old. I was in Liberia yesterday and I saw the inauguration of an old president. I got so worried. But when I saw the vice president, I left Liberia in a very comfortable way, because I saw a generational mix where the old and the young coexist in one office. And I hope the vice president will not be suffocated, because the president must know that with all his experience and advanced age, he has a duty to pass the baton to the younger generation. We call on all African leaders not to leave an office with a coffin. When the time comes for them to go, they must leave without calling the army to extend their term. No one is born a leader. No one is a traditional leader in a political office. If you want to be a traditional leader, go and fight in your tribe for those type of issues. We don't subscribe to people who want to leave a political office with a coffin. We will still give you a state funeral because you are a former president. We will still pay you pensions and give you protection and take care of you as long as you respect those who came after you. You have to ensure that democracy matures in such a manner in Africa, where the previous president does not make it his business to fight the current president. You must allow the new to lead with all their faults, because you are the same. It doesn't mean you are perfect. The young ones who are coming after you will challenge the current one. No African leader who is on retirement should lead from the grave. They must all be like all other progressive former presidents who are statesmen at home, waiting for courtesy visits and consultation and attending to honor state functions. Those are the duties of former presidents, because Africa must be stable. Africa must go through democracy at all times. And elections in Africa should never mean the blood on the floor. We Africans must hate seeing our own blood. We must always protect each other, because we love ourselves so much that we don't want to see our own blood. I always tell them that white people do not want to see their own blood. That's why it's not easy for a white person to kill another white person. If a well-built white man comes in here and beat you up and you are thin like me, don't try to fight fiscal because you're going to be defeated. They are scared of their blood. Look for an object and threaten to throw that object on a white man. Is going to leave this wall running. Not because he's scared of the object, but he knows that he can be injured by the object and he will see his own blood. Africans don't have a problem with seeing their own blood. We kill each other at the slightest provocation. We don't negotiate power. We force our way into power. And in most cases, we are not even the initiators of this violence. It is white people who sponsor the black on black violence. Because of the absence of black consciousness, we find it easy to kill one another. The killings must stop in Africa. In Africa, guns must be replaced by hugs. When we see each other, even when we disagree vehemently, we must agree to disagree in a brotherly and sisterly way because we value each other's blood. Ghanaians, we must make sure that we refuse the suppression of media freedom because without media freedom, we are nothing. If there is anyone who can tell the world of any wrongdoing in Ghana and in South Africa and everywhere else, is the fourth estate. It must be protected. It doesn't matter how bad they write about you. You must protect their right to write. Because without that pen, you must know there is an ushering in of a dictatorship. If media is suppressed, if media can't write about corruption, if media takes bribes from governments, you must know those are the dark days of the African continent. Today, we've got our own platforms on the social media. Let us help the traditional media to expose the corrupt leadership, to expose the mining companies that milk Africa without leaving anything in Africa. The gold of Ghana must remain in Ghana and service the people of Ghana. The minerals of Ghana, the minerals of South Africa must service Africa. The EFF believes in one Africa where we've got one president. I know Kwame Nkrumah was accused of wanting to be a president of Africa. There was nothing wrong with that. The man qualified because he woke us up from the dead. We continue Kwame Nkrumah's call. Even if we don't achieve it in our lifetime, we must create a solid foundation for one Africa, because one Africa is a threat to Europe and America. Africa with one president, Africa with one currency, Africa with one military command, Africa with one parliament. It's a threat that America cannot stand. Imagine a currency of Africa against the currency of USA. Ours will be based on the natural and mineral resources of our continent. And what will the currency of France be based on? Because France can't even produce anything for its survival. The whole soccer team of France is Africa. That's why when France plays with Britain, we all unwittingly support France because we see the blackness of the team. That's how much important we are as Africa to this Europe, America, and all those who support neocolonialism. Fellow Ghanaians, anyone who says the people of Palestine must be killed is an enemy of ours. The people of Palestine have not committed any sin to anyone. These organizations that got passports here in Ghana during colonial times and during apartheid times, they were called terrorist organizations. But to us, they were never terrorist organizations. They were revolutionary organizations that seek the liberation of our own countries. We cannot listen to the same propaganda that was used against us during the years of liberation. Kwame Nkrumah was called a terrorist. Nelson Mandela is still on the list of terrorists in USA because they fought for the self-determination of Africans. That's exactly what Hamas is demanding, that let the people of Palestine reclaim their own land. Let the people of Palestine have the self-determination without anyone imposing anything to the people of Palestine. If the people of Palestine want two-state solution, let them say so. No one must meet in UN or everywhere else and say there's going to be a two-state solution in Palestine. It must be the Palestinians themselves, like the South Africans decided that we are going to coexist with the settlers. We will not send them to the sea. It was not a decision of the UN. It was a conscious decision by South Africans. Why are the Palestinians not allowed to make the same self-determination? Shame on the leadership of Ghana for saying they support what is happening against the people of Gaza. They must be ashamed of themselves, because any African who knows what settlers do when they settle in your country will never support that nonsense that is happening in Palestine. Ghanaians, we are not saying we are fighting the Jews. We are not saying Jewish women must be killed, Jewish children must be killed. Our struggle is against apartheid Israel, and we make no apology about that, and we want the apartheid of Israel collapsed with the immediate effect. We salute the government of South Africa for having listened to the EFF when we said that the Israeli ambassador and embassy must be removed from South Africa. Parliament of South Africa, through a motion placed by the EFF, took a resolution that Israeli embassy must leave South Africa because we cannot share the territory with bloody, thirsty individuals who have declared war on humanity. What is happening in Palestine is genocide. It has got no any other name. You can't bomb a hospital. Even if the leader of Hamas is in that hospital, as long as he enters a hospital, you must cease fire and wait and work on an alternative solution to get him out of a hospital. You cannot bomb a refugee camp because there are international laws that governs how you treat refugee camps. Even when you don't agree with Hamas or any other thing of that nature. But please protect humanity. We need all those who want to give humanitarian support to be given a passage to enter Gaza, to send water, to send food, to send medical equipment and medicine in Gaza. Israel is refusing a passage for humanitarian intervention in Gaza. And every individual who's self-respecting, especially ourselves as Africans, can never agree with a country that can refuse people water, because water is life. Ghanaians, the unity of this continent starts from here, because the determination, the self-determination of Africa started from here. When you got your first independence, we knew that day, that one day South Africa will be free. And when Frelimo won in Mozambique, we celebrated in South Africa as if that was our freedom. But we knew that the freedom of the people of Mozambique means the freedom of South Africa, because that's how we are connected. We celebrate each other's achievement. It started here in Ghana, it ended in South Africa. The unity of Africa must start here in Ghana, and will capture it in South Africa, because we always followed the leadership of the Ghanaian people. The economic freedom of Africa will start in South Africa. We want our land. We make no apology when we say we want our land. Our land was stolen, and we want it back without paying a cent. And no one must pay for a cent everywhere in Africa when they demand the expropriation of land without compensation. These people came and stole your car, and later on you discover your car. They say, it's true, it's your car, but pay us before you get this car back. And when you ask them why you say I must pay, they say, we have put Mac wheels, we have improved the car, therefore you must pay us, irrespective of them being in possession of stolen property. Anyone in possession of stolen property is a criminal, and therefore anyone in possession of our land without our permission is a land thief, is a criminal, and must be identified as such. When I say to you, demand the land, and will lead that struggle from South Africa, I know land brings about everything. For you to have a hair salon, you need land. For you to have a small shop of IT, you need land. The beautiful beaches belongs to the land. The mineral resources, the gold, iron ore, copper, and all types of mineral resources belong to the land. That's why when they came to Africa, they did not steal our women or our men. They stole the land. They knew women and men will come with the land. That's why we need to start from where they started when they offended us. We need to take the land, because once we take the land, they will start respecting us. You will never be respected if you don't own property. It doesn't matter if all of us in South Africa own property. As long as the people of Namibia, as long as the people of Ghana do not own the land, then our land ownership is meaningless, because when you go to the USA, they don't see South African. They see an African. West, they can't differentiate between South Africa and Ghana. That's why all of us must reclaim the land and the mineral resources of the land and the natural resources of the land, so that when we move all over the world, when they see a black person, they should know these are the property owners of their own continent and their own land. So when we fight for economic freedom, we should do so without being ashamed. Because political freedom that Kwame Nkrumah achieved and generations after him achieved is meaningless without economic freedom. You can vote until you are purple. As long as there is no bread on the table, that vote is meaningless. You must vote when you arrive at home. You must find bread. You must find free education. You must find quality public health. You must find reliable electricity, and not what we experienced earlier on. We must make sure that we own everything that belongs to us. So Africans, I don't care how many we are, we must believe in ourselves. At least be an individually liberated African who is not scared of colonizers, who is not scared of white people, who doesn't worship the establishment, who calls a spade a spade. That is the only way Africa will be respected. This continent is one. They might think they divided it. I can guarantee you now, like we saw when Ghana got liberated in South Africa, we said one day it will happen. It came many years after, but eventually it came. The unity of this continent is going to come. And when we call on each other to come into each other's countries, we must embrace that with ease. Me being here in Ghana, I don't feel like I'm in a different country. Because in this world, there is nothing different I'm not used to in South Africa. When I look at left or right, I see my brothers and sisters. When I walk outside and drive all over, I see the poverty of Africa that I see at home. So why would I claim I'm in a different home? Because conditions are the same. So when I'm here, I'm at home. When you are in South Africa, feel at home. South Africans are not xenophobic. South Africans are peace-loving people, and I extend my invitation to all of you to come and study in South Africa, to come and work in South Africa, to come and take your holidays in South Africa, because it is your home too. The same way you welcomed us here, we'll welcome you in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is a powerful speech delivered by the President and the Commander-in-Chief of Economic Freedom Fighters in South Africa, Mr. Julius Selo Malema, when he visited Ghana. So Malema has insisted importance of unity, talking about United Africa, the dream of Kwame Nkrumah. But we hope one day, as Malema said, the day will come when Africa will unite, and that's why we are here to champion and to share our thoughts on how we as Africans we can unite and bring the people together. We are one. Whether you are in Nigeria, whether you are in Cote d'Ivoire, or in Ghana, or in Senegal, in Madagascar, all over the continent, if you are black people, you are an African. So Africa is your home. Africa is your motherland. So family, let us now move to next speaker who we are going to hear is Mr. Joshua Maponga, a farmer of thought. So let us now move to Mr. Joshua Maponga, a farmer of thought. And here is what he's preaching and telling African people about what we can do to move forward as Africans. Welcome.
The chaos will be there because you are upsetting the system. You are showing the system the middle finger. You are saying you would rather die fighting than leave the slaves. To take what belongs to us, you should not find us dying before you came here. Neither are we going to die. It's a do or die. It's only that our technocrats are scared of dying now. They are postponing the funeral for the next generation. Let's not disturb the waters, guys. Things will go bad. I'm about to get my retirement. I'm about to no guys, think the white man is not as bad. No. When we start this thing, we start a whole other issue of problems. There'll be constitution, we don't have time for that, guys. We can't just make money and we die. You have that quality of African who is running public office, who is tired of change and tired of evolution. All they want is a beautiful nice land in the Bahamas. Their holiday is set and their packages are short. Those are selfish, bloody suckers of the system who are a nuisance to our survival. They neither care about us or any one of us, even what they claim to care for. They are lying about it. You cannot tell me that they made your nation suffer. Entire nation. Because you are sitting pretty. Because you are sorted. Bugger all of you. You are going to die. We will not change this thing because it will mess up my retirement and my pension and etc. I don't call these human beings who do such things. Because any human being who sells the land steals from the future. Any person who gives land or sells land to a foreigner sells the future of our children. Because land does not grow. There's no factory where land can grow. So if you sell any piece of land, you must know you are transacting with the future. And the children you will bear them to pay the debt. The land of the mind flows into the land of reproduction. After we have thought well, I want you to become very emotional. How does this affect my children? I want you to become selfish. When you talk about land, you may be doing well, but this time around is for every Namibian child. How will this assist them? What are we reproducing? Are we going to bear another generation of children as slaves again? We need to ask ourselves that when we go to bed with our wives as men. Are we reproducing poverty? Are we breeding slaves? As men, when you go home and you're looking for your wife, are you breeding slaves or you're breeding free people? And if that will cause you to zip up and stop, then nothing else in the world will do. Because you are a fool you are, to populate the world with people similar to you. The land of the mind, the land of reproduction, concludes with the land of the land, where we eat our food. And I'll start off my presentation exactly where I stopped, on the other side. The land of land is the one that is underneath our feet. It is illegal for any young man to find a wife before he finds land. Because from the land we come, to the land we go back to. He who has no land has no right to reproduction. He who has no land has no right to wealth. He who has no land has no right to sovereignty. He who has no land has no right to say anything on the land. Because all the laws that are there govern the land. How can a group of all of us, educated technocrats, fail to crack this puzzle? That it's not as difficult as we think it is. It's just all of us putting this democracy through the window and saying, gentlemen, come together. What do we do with our land? Don't tell me what Constitution says, but tell me what the people say. Tell me what the people want. And let's create something that speaks to us. Let's call the other fools and let's vote this way. For once we can be truthful, even in our vulnerability. To say we've assumed constitutions that we cannot even read, later on interpret correctly. They have started to oppress us and limit our production, even reducing our growth. It is now possible that the government can come up with a policy here, gazette it, and sabotage it oneself with its own policy. Huh? We are going to. Hallelujah. We where's my friend? I want to be very close to you. The agreement, young man. The problem of organizations such as yourself, I want you to take this to your boss. When the government trusts you with money of that nature, you have great capacity of abusing your usefulness beyond your function. Because you're a financial institution, you become ungovernable and insensitive to the very market that is the best line of your profit margin. So it's possible right now at your growth that you're not doing as much service to African farmers to develop them than you are doing on those who are already developed to make them better. You need to look at your target market. Then you can report statistics at 86% achieved. Break down those statistics. How many colors, how many blacks, how many whites, how many what? Is our intention deliberate? So that we can push a certain agenda. That is intention. And be intentional about it. This is the development side of our business. Even in your loans. How can it be that we can come to and buy a farm for 12 million? 12 million. And then you charge me 20 million interest on a 12 million fund. And interest from their owners sitting on 20 million. And you say you're developing Africans. Can I ask you a question? Which Africans can produce 1.6 million on their produce to meet up the 8.5 that you require out of them? It can be possible. But now we've lost 8 farms, auctions, on record. As we are talking right now, amongst the 170 that are on their way to the auction, we've got my statistics. Maybe some of them are right here. 170 farms are on their way to the auction. Conclusions are already there. They'll be under the hammer. The first 8, only whites went there. Will buy the land. And you are the facilitator. It's a business transaction. Sometimes in our business, we use ethical. You say in the short term, this might look like a big, good business model. But in the long term, are we not going to be creating another problem another 200, 300 years from now? And I think that forward thinking is a gift from the gods. Not all of us can see through the window of tomorrow and make decisions today while standing in tomorrow. That was for you. As I'm concluding, I'll be putting my brother on standby, just get the background of the history of land in Namibia, and we'll end up with my favorite aunt running it all together. I have a story to share with you as a religious leader. What gives me the authority to speak? I have a right to speak because I work with the religious institutions of the world, some of the best. I'm well trained in terms of managing social dynamics, marketing staff that will push people in a certain direction. I've done that extensively well. You don't hear me, guys? I would sell heaven when no one has been. And I'm not joking. 80% of you, I'll baptize you tonight. If I wanted to do it. You will so want to go to heaven with me, and no one has ever been there, we've never taken a selfie. But I was selling that. And I look back in my space as a well-proliferated preacher, etc. And I turn back and say, in what way is what I'm saying helping people to become better? And I felt like I had gone way ahead of myself. Because the issues that I was addressing were much more secondary to the primary issues of self-actualizing. I reached that level already. I knew who I was. I knew I was not colored, I was not black, I was not what. I knew exactly I am too. I am. I'm the center of the universe right here. When I was coming back from there, my questions were different. And I said, in as much as I'm not beginning to celebrate this spiritual aura that I'm enjoying, I discovered there's no one who can experience this unless and until they are liberated at grassroots things such as land, self-actualization, appreciation of their own culture, self-identity, and etc. Immediately someone gets in touch with that, somehow they begin to migrate into appreciation of each other, of their land and of their resources. And we begin to influence politicians. We begin to think towards us. By so doing, we're transforming the society towards the goals that we want to achieve. This is another way of fighting without fighting. We've been to war in our minds. This is where influence and education and media is constant, so that a common agenda is constantly pumped into the heads of the people until it's no longer a problem of the farmers' union that we have a problem of land, but it is a national problem that we have a problem with land. The organization cannot own the problem. The country must own the problem. And when a country owns the problem, the question is, who puts the government into power? You follow? I'm an old man now. I cannot mix my words, but I speak in a great trick of wisdom. You need to follow carefully with a fine pencil to get to the intricacies of simplicity. We therefore begin to own our narrative as Africans. Not given the right to speak the story of Naboth. Naboth lost his vineyard to Jezebel and Ahab. Naboth is a commoner. Ahab is a king. Jezebel is a queen. In the governing spaces of supernatural dialogue, the Bible decides to place this story in the midst of it all. The question is why? Because the issues of Naboth will unlock the human mind to the dangers of having your property too close to those who envy it. And if they envy it enough, they will conspire to kill you for your land. And never forget, in your mental gymnastics, that Jezebel represents the church. And Ahab represents the political situation and the institutions and governance system. If Jezebel speaks to Ahab, the commoner is always sacrificed. Now, these are thinking patterns and tools that when you sit around in your conversations of speaking and arguing about the nothingness of soccer in sport, tell yourselves every time you see them, they are the thieves. When you meet them at lunch, say, they are the thieves. When you meet them in the shopping mall, say, they are the thieves. You cannot stop addressing them as such. If you fail to do it yourselves, leave it in the bloodline of your children. That the land belongs to its people. They don't own it, it owns them. From it they came, to it they shall return.
Evening.
Welcome back, family, friends, fellow Africans. It's my hope that you heard from Mr. Joshua Maponga. Maponga was talking about the land issue. And of course, the issue of the land has become a thorn to southern part of another continent Africa, especially to the countries such as South Africa, where the land is still in the hands of white minority. So that's why the story of the land is still um, taking and uh, high space in southern part of the continent of Africa. So we cannot do anything if we don't have the land, because the land has everything. If you talk about wealth, you talk about the land. And that's why, as Malema said, when these people came to Africa, the first thing that they did is to take the land. They took the land from us because they know that if they have the land, we the people will go to them to beg, asking for them to do something, to do work. And that's why they have created wealth because they have the land. The land has everything. If you talk about water, you talk about the land. If you talk about minerals, you talk about the land. So, family, friend, fellow Africans, let us now move to another speaker. This time we're going to hear a little bit from our leaders, President of Botswana, a little bit, and the President of Namibia, Her Excellency Madam Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwa. And here is what they have said to us.
Settled down in the office after my inauguration on the 21st March, which you have honored me by
historical social connections, economic ties that bind us strongly together, and we must grow and develop together. Botswana and Namibia occupy an enviable position in the world. We therefore must work together, find zones of aggregation where we can pool both our talents, skills, and our numbers to generate economic activity and economic benefits for our people. We have begun. Even our predecessors in the offices that we now occupy had started some steps in the direction of facilitating free movement of goods and persons between the two countries. We need to build on these initiatives and strengthen and deepen them so that our people are able to travel freely and goods move more swiftly, more smoothly, more quickly, and trade is facilitated. We therefore will need to remove all blockages and barriers to trade, the flow of trade. There are many projects that we can co-invest in as countries. Namibia has been very generous to Botswana. We have been given land for a dry port. We are most grateful to the Namibian government. And we are confident, we have absolutely no doubt that the relations between our two countries will become stronger, will become firmer, will bring outstanding outcomes for our people.
Let me sincerely thank yourself, Mr. President, for the hospitality and also for your speedy response when I put on a request to say that having now a bit settled down in the office after my inauguration on the 21st March, which you have honored me by attending, say that I would now like to come and introduce myself formally to yourself, and of course through you to the people of Botswana. As we were discussing, we have all recalled the long history that exists between our two countries and our two people who have really created a strong base of our cooperation that we, the current generation, are basing on, and definitely the future generation has also to cherish that longer standing cooperation between our two countries. It's true that our predecessors have done a work that we have to build on, and one of them is the uplifting our cooperation when a binational commission was established that is chaired at the level of heads of state. It had its first session here in Botswana, and now Namibia has to host the second session this year. And as I've informed you, Mr. President, I will definitely, through our ministers of international relations, we have to agree on the date for us to have that meeting in the course of this year to make sure that we follow up on the programs that have been agreed upon. The unequal society in our country is unacceptable, which is a result of high unemployment, which is affecting our young people. In Namibia, 44.4% of our young people are unemployed. And we are not taking this very lightly. And therefore, our projects that we can jointly embark upon, no doubt they will have a significant impact into our economy, thus making it possible for us to reduce the unemployment, which means reducing poverty, and by implication to reduce the gap between the have and the have-not. We have a responsibility towards our people in our individual countries, in the sub-region SADC, and Africa as a whole. And I think this is really the time when we are seeing a lot of changes globally that Africa needs to re-engage among itself, and decided on the best way we can save the people of our continent. We have all what it needed. Over 60 years of Africa's independence. I'm sure we have all the skills that is required, and the resources are still there. There's nothing really that can prevent us. What we need is just the political will, and then to act on any decisions that we are taking, which is aimed to save our people. Yes, Namibia and Botswana, we agree to continue strengthening our cooperation. The railway is very critical as an economic driver. Now that Namibia has oil and gas, we cannot claim this to be a Namibian resources. It's a resources in our region. It's a resource in the neighborhood, and we can all benefit from it. You recall when we gave Botswana the dry port, we are saying that the fact that we are a coastal town, we cannot be selfish and deny our neighbors to have access to the port. So that is why all our neighbors, we gave them land to have access to the port. And this is really the trend that we need to be cooperating. So I'm very grateful that you have received us with your team. And really, I just want to confirm for them to know that don't complain when we have to manage the countries in the way we feel is necessary for the citizens of these two countries. And for us, we can engage at any time something comes up, and then we ask you to come on board and implement, since we have all taken an oath, and we need to go by that oath. So we are one, and as we stand now, yourself and me are at the center. And the people of the two countries, they are looking at us to save them from whatever they are suffering from. And I think having accepted this responsibility, we have accepted to save them to the best of our ability. So thank you very much for receiving us, and let us continue to work together. Rest be assured that Namibia, even in the face of the multilateralism which is now being watered down, in the face of so many political dynamics, Namibia and Botswana will remain neighbors.
Yes. That is those are our presidents, President Duma Gideon Boko, the president of Botswana, and also the president of Namibia, Her Excellency Madam Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwa, family, friends, fellow Africans. As you heard from our presidents, one good thing that the president of Namibia, she has said is that since independence, we have all skills that we need to have. We have all resources. What we lack is political wills. It's my hope that this new generation of leadership will come up with political wills to work together to unite the people of Africa and to make sure that Africans are going to benefit or to be beneficiaries of their natural resources. And that's what many Africans have been always asking for. So we have heard from these leaders, presidents. If you have something, please to share with us, do so through the comment section. Now let us move to another speaker. And now we are going to hear from of course, from Africa, Excellency Ambassador Dr. Alikana Chiomboli Kwao. And here is a message from Mama Africa. Let us now move on to listen what Mama Africa she's saying. All in all, what we are doing here is to see how we can bring Africans together and how we can share thought ideas on how we can unite this continent. Because for a long time, we have been talking about these issues, the issue of unity, borderless continent, free visa, but till today we are still struggling to attain and to achieve those goals. So let us hear from Mama Africa, Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Alikana Chiomboli Kwao.
We need a single African currency. We need a single African monetary policy. We need our own financial institutions at a continental level, like the African Stock Exchange. All those things need to be addressed. And until we can achieve some of that integration at that level, it's a difficult conversation. Keep in mind, it took us from 1963 to 2018 for us to have the heads of states come up with the decision, which is now the African Continental Free Trade Area, where they have agreed that Africa needs to enter the world market as one customs union. It took us 56 years to get this decision. So you can imagine going back again and trying to start with yet another one. I don't know how long it's going to take us, but I'm hoping that we can all wake up enough and realize that we're still suffering from the legacy of slavery and the legacy of colonization. Because if the truth be told, there are representatives from various governments who are participating in these conversations, and they need to stand up. They need to push back and just tell these colonizers the truth. They are abusing us. They are spitting in our faces. They are beating us up. They are burning us. And we're supposed to be nice. And how long do they need to continue to beat us up before we all come together and say enough is enough? I'm hoping that we are getting to where the average Black person is simply sick and tired of being sick and tired. We can't continue to take this abuse. And they, the colonizers, they know it. They know that they're abusing. That's the sad part. They know they're abusing us, and we need to tell them to stop. That's just all there is to it. They need to stop abusing Africa. They need to stop exploiting Africa. Right. So actually, the point I was trying to make by saying the colonizers are still in Africa, they haven't left. So for over 60 years, we got our independence, different countries. Our only option were the former colonizers, were the West. So it was refreshing to see China coming in and giving us an option. It's actually refreshing to see other countries coming in and giving us an option. So we don't have to be stuck with the former colonizers as the only option. So yes, China was welcome. The only problem is the manner in which China came by insisting on bringing their own employees. But even then, I will say I can let it go because we need to own that responsibility. We should have negotiated better. We should have told China, if you bring in 50 people, then the other 50, if job needs 100 people, 50 should be yours, the other 50 are local, and you got to train the local people. We failed to do better negotiations. But I can tell you, since the last meeting the heads of states had with the president of China in 2018, a lot of that has changed. A lot of bad contracts that China had been involved with various countries have been cancelled. So the heads of state are realizing that, and they are addressing that issue. So I think as far as trading with China, that situation is being addressed and things are getting better. The problem is now with the individual citizens. They're the ones who are just downright racist. Even on the continent, they are abusing the Africans on our own continent. And then, of course, what's happening or in China itself, they just have no respect for Black people. They're racist to the core, some of them. Not all of them, don't get me wrong. Many of them are good people, but we have a significant percentage that are just racist. So if they don't like Africans, then maybe they just need to get out of Africa as well. It's really that simple. I know I heard of Bobby Wine now planning on airlifting Africans out of China. Well, my position is if African leaders have to airlift their people out of China, then President Xi Jinping
Yes, that is Mama Africa, Excellency Ambassador Dr. Ali Kanach Ombolkwa. Of course, the video of Mama Africa has scratching, so we are going to work on that video to collect some mistakes, but we're going to share another video from Pan-Africanist. And of course, this time we're going to hear from Professor Pilo Lumumba, as well as our comrade Brian Kagolo from Zimbabwe. So this was a powerful conversation from Africa, from uh, Professor Pio Lumumba, I'm sorry, and Brian Kagolo about the continent of Africa. So let us now move on to this Pan-Africanist. This conversation or this live streaming is to bring Africans together to be conscious about the importance of unity. So we know many of us, we like unity, we love unity. We have been talking about unity, but how can we unite and why it is very important for us to come together and unite. So family, friends, fellow Africans, in the background, you see how Africa is so green, it's so beautiful. Africa has natural lives, natural trees, as you can see. Africa is so attractive, but those who are exploiting our natural resources are those who are destroying our mother continent, Africa. If you go inside in that forest, you find the Chinese harvesting resources. Now you can ask, what have we done to stop them? You know, these people sometimes they rob our leaders, they try to do everything to have access to our natural resources. But if we can become united, we can stop them from distracting our environment, exploiting our natural resources, but we cannot do as an individual. We need to come together. That's why we are here to share our thoughts, ideas on how we can come together in order for us, the people of Africa, to protect our resources. Let us now move to Professor Pilo Lumumba.
Not white supremacy, it's black inferiority and the abiding appetite amongst the black elite to function on the basis of white embrace. Number one. If we ourselves, even our thieves, are not patriotic, when they steal from Africa, they invest in Europe. They don't believe. The minister said, fix our own government, get a governance system. The people in charge of governance system steal and invest elsewhere as an indictment or an affirmation of their own incompetence and incapacity. But the second bit is that I think both His Excellency Musa Faki, Professor Lumumba, and the minister indicated, when you grow a disconnect between the people who give you legitimacy, who are the ultimate resource for the transformation of any nation, when you grow a disconnect between your culture, Amilcar Cabral said, every revolution is first a cultural revolution. A people must believe in themselves. That way they're able to produce both citizens and leaders who are not only patriotic and competent, but that are future focused and that are regenerative. Unfortunately for us, we have constantly killed three forms of assets. First asset, we kill our babies and our young people by never exposing them. And Rwanda is an exception to this, to what it means to govern and what it means to negotiate, what it means to compete. Number two, in all our countries, anybody, the age group of the people sitting at this table, when you are out of government, you are finished. The state has absolutely no use of the experience, the expertise, and the resources. We are constantly going elsewhere to look for experts that we either have in the diaspora or we have in our countries. The inability to build, retain, use our own local expertise and experience. The third is that we have created everything to be so leader-centric that most of our citizens either wait for God or wait for the leader or wait for foreigners. And the day must come in Africa where Pan-Africanism is Pan-Africanism of the people. No matter how brilliant institutions are, continental or regional, as long as they are not nourished by the ideas of African intellectuals, African artists and activists. But there is hope. Many of you may not see it as hope. The dominance of Afrobeat and Afropop in the world today, sending a message, if that can be used as a vehicle of cultural regeneration, if what the young people have been able to do with tech can be used as a way of reimagining, then what we're talking about as a phenomenon will end. The third is that we can't keep sending all our people. I know that it's maybe brain gain for some people. We can't keep sending all our young people to Europe, to America, and elsewhere without creating pathways back. Why? Frantz Fanon said they realized that the empire or the center came and took the best from amongst us and took them to their best institutions, and they emptied them of their own culture and their own sense of being, and they filled them with ideas of how to be good Europeans and Americans. And when they returned, their kith and kin realized that their children had not come back. What had come back were echoes of the empire. You and I, having had the opportunities to serve outside our continent, when we return, we're not trying to establish little Europe's, little France, little America. There must be an authentic way. That's why Rwanda's revolution is not only leadership. It is homegrown solutions, not for Rwanda only, but for the whole world, not just for Africa. We cannot assert ourselves culturally, intellectually, spiritually, as long as we are leprous and dependent. We do not and we have not controlled our mining sector. We do not and we have not controlled our data and statistics. We do not and have not controlled our education. We do not and have not controlled our security, whether it's digital security or it's generic continental security, whether the threats are exogenous or indigenous. We do not and have not controlled our communication channels. This is something that's been realized since the inception of the African Union. And if you think about this, as we talk about unconstitutional changes of governments and other things, there are several things that are important as we reflect on foreign interference. State and nation building, how we transitioned to independence, and the Cold War and how it played out, the use of mercenaries, military coups, and capture and retention of power, and etc. In statistical terms, Chairperson, there were 200 coups in Africa between 1965 and 2012. In the 1960s, there was at least one coup every 60 days. In the 1970s, barely 18 years after Ghana's independence, at least 85% of African states had some coup experience or the other. And West Africa accounted for almost 44% of those. I mean the coups between 1958 and 2008. There was a temporary reprieve in the period post-1990. Some academics have suggested this because Africa had become more democratic. I want to disabuse you of that notion because it's lazy intellectualism. What had changed was that Western interest in a unipolar world, in changing regimes, had dissipated. The West no longer needed to use force. There was no competitor, either ideological or otherwise. What had essentially happened, there was dominance of one set of interests. So as we reflect on unconstitutional change of government, it's not just mere tinkering at the local level, but it's also what explains the ouster of Nkrumah, the assassination of Lumumba, the assassination of Sankara, the assassination of Amilcar Cabral, the assassination of Samora Machel, the ouster of Sékou Touré. What is the fact? That in a unipolar world, the appetite to change had dissipated. As we see greater polarization between the West, the East, and the Middle, we're going to see once again an intensification of interference. Less than 15% of that interference, Chair, will be justified as follows: protecting and promoting human rights or preventing genocide, protecting lives and property of citizens, fighting terrorism, violent extremism, or stopping some form of unproductive ideology. However, what we know, no intervention happens except it is in the interest and the propagation of the political, economic, social, cultural, racial, and other strategic interests of those who have power. But there are direct consequences, and have been for Africa, which are chaos and instability, retarded development, internationalization of conflicts, regional instability, destruction of cultural and other heritage, as we saw in Timbuktu, destruction of state institutions and public services, warlordism and violent extremism, as we've seen in the Horn and in the Sahel, collapse of the formal economy, and debt, poverty and inequality, sexual and gender-based violence, and the pillage of our economies. Now, if we imagine in this framing that these are what we're dealing with, what are those channels of transmission? I want to suggest to you, Chair, that the first transmission of interference is an incompetent, corrupt, and ideologically unclear leadership. The second is a structure in the bureaucracy of government and administration that is beholden to the white gaze or to external gaze. Within the public administration, you harvest intelligence and you harvest division. The third is religion, as you rightly said. Religion, and it's not just Christianity. We have seen the competition for different sects of Islam in the Horn, in the Mediterranean. And it's not just religion, it's NGOs, international and national. Not just those, but churches as well. And I'm talking about these as institutions. But ultimately, Steve Biko described the vector of interference. He says the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. If you do not control what you educate, if you do not control what you communicate, if you do not control your narrative, you develop what we've seen, a disconnect between the leadership and the citizenry, a disconnect between the old and the young, a disconnect between the analog generation that has power and the virtual generation that is unemployed. A disconnect that is easy to exploit. Then the future of this intervention, Chair, data and the digital platforms will define the most potent weapon in interference. You do not need to do it physically, it will be done remotely. And lastly, Chair, I want to suggest to you, the second most potent is economic fragility. A people that cannot feed themselves, that depend on foreigners to feed them, will become slaves, either willingly or by force, until this continent assures its stomach infrastructure by its ability to feed itself, until this continent assures its mental infrastructure by the ability to think for itself and ideate. Then this continent will be thought for by others, fed by others. There's no liberty without these liberated intellectual zones and the ability to feed yourself. So interference happens because of our own inferiority and because of the supremacist views of others. My father told me a story of a man who was given a job as a janitor at the school. His job was to lock the gate every day at 6 p.m. And then some people in the neighborhood came and informally redistributed the fence. Some of you would say stole the fence of the school. This man faithfully locked the gate, but the fence had been stolen. And the purpose of locking the gate was to ensure safety. If the fence is stolen, put back the fence. So let me explain what this. A young Zimbabwean businessman called Busisa Moyo characterized the problem of Africa. He said, we're not broke, we are broken. Right? And there is a difference. It's a very wealthy continent in terms of its human resource. When the United States decided to appoint a head for PEPFAR, they took away from my senior here, the chairperson of the African Union, his head of Africa CDC. They are Africans strategically, or black persons strategically heading very strategic institutions in the global north. Why am I saying this? My elder Ashraf asked me about narrative. There are 5 modes of narrative. First mode is action. That's what I think the chairperson of the African Union is saying, that people will not believe what we say until they see us act according to our beliefs. Pan-Africanism is not a theory. It's the lived solidarity that made the Ethiopians give Nelson Mandela a passport, that made Senegalese civil servants contribute $1 each every month for the liberation of South Africa, that made Zambia take care of us as Zimbabweans and South Africans as we fought for our liberation, that made Uganda take care of the comrades that now run this country. If Pan-Africanism has no active solidarity action, no active affirmative action, the words are meaningless, because even the devil can quote scripture. The second is dialogic. We have for too long used authority to govern our people and not dialogue. And in this respect, I must commend my colleagues and comrades here in Rwanda, because they are able to hold leadership meetings where citizens talk to leaders. I am hoping the African Union chairperson and the African Union Commission chairperson can actually convene with ECOSOC a conference each year of the citizens, not just NGO, a conference of the citizens drawn from the continent, and talk. Because often we only get to talk to our leaders in conferences in the United States and in Europe, and thought. There is no Pan-Africanism without doing what Mishera Mugo said: create liberated zones of Pan-Africanist thought. When we think, it's our European theorists who are thinking. When we speak, it's our American teachers who are speaking. It is okay to have gone to America to learn. It is okay to have gone to Asia to learn. But what is the influence of African intellectuals and thought on what the African Union does, on what our governments do, on what our civil society does? Number three, we need to describe oppression. I'm sorry, I hear this a lot when I come to Rwanda. You have to hear me, I'm Rwandese, so you cannot do anything about me. I have immunity here. You people like to say, let's forget, let's not blame anyone. Please, stop that nonsense. When the Holocaust happened against the Jews, it was 1940s, 45. Not a single African country other than Ethiopia and those who had not been colonized was free. The first African country got independent 1957. There is not a single Jewish person who will allow you to forget the Holocaust. And in fact, there are crimes, not just in Israel, across the world against denial of the Holocaust. US foreign policy, Israeli foreign policy is very key. It's a central issue. Africans, for some reason, must forget something that happened 50 years ago, if you are Zimbabwe 80 years ago. Listen, we must always remind our friends from Europe and elsewhere that slavery was a crime against humanity, as is colonialism and neo-colonialism. That killing Sankara in 1984 because you are opposed to communism and plunging his country into chaos that you are now trying to solve as a problem of poor governance is a shared responsibility. So we will take responsibility for our nakedness. But for goodness sake, a naked emperor cannot lecture us about how to be clothed. And I'll tell you the contradictions. When Europeans first came here, if you come to the south of the continent, ladies did not wear long skirts. And they did not cover their top. Then they said, no, that's indecent. So we covered everything, including the head. And then the Europeans have decided to go nude now. Now the dress code in Europe is pre-colonial Africa. And then when our kids try and dress up that way, we say it's an African. We are confused around ownership. So lastly, Chairperson, the taboos. You see, Chairperson, we need to talk about global anti-black racism, the treatment of African migrant laborers in the Middle East, in the Arab world, and in the Asian world, and in Europe, is a matter for the African Union to constantly pronounce itself on. And I'm glad, Chairperson, you issued a statement on George Floyd, but I'm waiting for the African Union resolution from last January on reparations. There was a formal policy of the United States government in 2015 for reparations by companies behind the Holocaust. There needs to be, the conversation on reparations is not to be settled by African political elites. Right? Today, Zimbabwe is paying back white commercial farmers reparations. But when you talk about any reparations, it's like the black body is not worth repair. What we must do is endure, be resilient, go forward, don't look back, trudge on. But today, with the scramble of Africa that PLO was talking about, they will interfere here, whether we put in place the right policies or we put in place the good governance. Why? They need the lithium. And if your right policy is not consistent with their green energy transition that they control, they will take you out and they will cause instability. We cannot do it as single countries. We are not uniting because it's the good thing to do. We are not uniting because it's the principled thing to do. If we don't unite, we will perish. If each one of our small countries, as economically unviable as we are, rush in order to prove distinctiveness, I'll tell you what will happen. We will be so fragmented intellectually, politically. Our institutions will have no meaning. Let me end with something more positive. I think Pan-Africanism flavor is alive today. You adults, you only listen when you have had a few glasses of wine to Afrobeat. And of course, you don't like this thing. They are always singing about body parts and so on and so forth. I want to suggest to you, one of the most revolutionary things that the African Union, under the leadership of the chairperson here, has done is to talk about arts, culture, and heritage, not as entertainment, not as add-on, but as part of imagining the future economy, is to talk about the digital, not as part of little things you do, but as part of building the economy. All that's left now is how do we defend African art, culture, and heritage, not only in Africa, but globally. How do we make sure it is the mainstream of AFCFTA, along with all the other big things we do? And how do we, in the digital economy, make sure we are not consumers of products that are produced elsewhere and not part of the production chain? Okay. If we do that, our Pan-Africanism is economic, our Pan-Africanism is cultural, our Pan-Africanism is intellectual, our Pan-Africanism is also spiritual. Just remember what Chinua Achebe said. We are not the children of Africa. We are the parents of Africa, because the Africa that we want is yet to be born. And we are the ones that history has charged with the responsibility to give birth to the Africa we want. So whatever we are frustrated with respect to the African Union, our responsibility is how do we make the normative frameworks and the institutions work, but how do we build the repository of expertise so that the African Union at any given time has access to the best brains, the best technical expertise in any field on the continent. The intervention in Iraq was couched in very benign terms. The intervention in Libya was couched in benign terms. I could give you 100 interventions where the justification, objectively speaking, was on the basis that there was evidence either of genocide or evidence. I'm sitting in Rwanda. The international community stood by as the genocide against the Tutsi happened. Yet in the same year, they were intervening in West Africa. The construct of benign and malign is controlled and related to the question of narrative and strategic self-interest. We've often not paid enough attention, and thank you, Chairperson of the African Union, for educating us on how the international fora of decision-making, the Security Council, and other fora, including at some stage how we transact within the International Criminal Court and other platforms. That evidence, and that was my point, we don't control data, we don't control digital platforms, we therefore are not controlling narrative in both analog and digital forms. What can practically be done? We do need to speak to Europeans, not as victims, because the erasure of the contribution in European consciousness of Africans to modernity and civility has constructed a white supremacist view that sees the evolution of modernity as a singularly European contribution. And it is only now that our young researchers are beginning to excavate the contributions of black people, of Africans, towards inventions. Because until now, the province of economy was not the province of black people. In my country, in Zimbabwe, when land was taken, a British court gave a judgment that said, the question before them and who owned the land, they said, what on the question of economics? Even we pejoratively only talk about our people as informal law, informal economy, yet the informal economy is formal. That's how India developed through its cottage industry. That's how we have a psychotic addiction to colonial definitions of what, and that's why Professor Ashraf is correct. It's not just a narrative about our contribution historically, it's a narrative about our contribution now. Our young people who developed M-Pesa, which is now being used globally, who developed Ushahidi, which has been used by over 300,000 organizations, including the Japanese, the US military, and the NATO forces, are never sufficiently credited. Why? Because it is not in the current psyche of most Europeans possible that Africans are anything else except the object of charity that deserve our mercy and our pity. Why? Because they are governed by tyrants, right? Or Africans are incapable of ethics. And we've constantly said that Switzerland, which received the Abacha loot, which received the loot from the then Zaire and now DRC, has constantly been ranked in anti-corruption indices as the cleanest country in the world. PLO and I are lawyers. The receipt of stolen property is theft at law. How is it that you will have Nigeria and Kenya? I think that if you're changing narrative, you also have to change behavior. Our African leaders and citizens can never transact revolution in Kenya. I start pointing, I refer to the historical atrocities into our underground water and nuclear waste, right? You know what it is said? This is retrogressive. It's undermining investment. It's again, listen, we cannot win the narrative battle by arguing in pockets. They are happy us talking about our localized, indigenized oppression. They are never happy us talking about the question of distribution and redistribution of the global economy, of global power. And what Nkrumah and others realized in 1963 at the founding conference, if Africa is not represented, if Africa does not own its narrative, but you can't own your narrative if your leadership is totally disconnected from its people. You can't own rural areas and slums where the majority of our people are. In fact, we treat them as security threats and they are over-policed. Number two, reform. Why? Because there are no African consultancies that we know. Even if they exist, we have no relationship with them to help us with AU reforms, with anything else. We have not, as a leadership, begun to recognize that the native is capable of knowledge. The native is capable of economy. The native is capable of invention. Learn from others without understanding, and I'll end with that, what William Tunga said, the former Chief Justice of Kenya. He says, let's not engage in this romanticist view that there can only be one way to learn. We first must indigenize knowledge. That's what I said, learn from our culture and traditions. Number two, we must diversify who we learn from. We can not only learn from the West, we need to learn from everybody who has something to teach. Number three, we must domesticate what we learn. If we're going to learn anything, let's domesticate. I think the chairperson and the minister said it's consciousness. Narrative is first and foremost by realizing self-worth, self-belief, and looking inward so that when you look outward, it is to supplement not a vacuous state of nothingness and inferiority, but it is to supplement a very stable, solid foundation where your culture, where your values, where your value for people is important. Thank you.
Wow.
Yes, that is Mr. Kagolo, Brian Kagolo, a Pan-Africanist from Active Ideas concerning about Africa, that we need also not to ignore things. In Africa, we have been told, those are things are the past. You have to move forward. Of course, Mr. Kagolo has said, if it's about reparation, let us, those who did bad thing to us, to pay reparation. Also, Mr. Kagolo has spoken the issue of reforms of African Union, and of course, we have been talking this issue many times about that the African Union that we have need to be reformed. We have African Union that is being sponsored by the West, so we need to have African Union that is working for the interest of many Africans. So that is Mr. Brian Kagolo. If you have something to share with us from what you heard from Mr. Brian Kagolo, you may share with us. And also, if you have something different, please share through the comment section with fellow Africans. We are here to find the best solution on how we can unite this continent. This time, we are talking about we are tired of hearing good speeches. We want action. We want to see leaders convene a meeting of a united Africa. If our leaders, political figures, are not ready for united Africa, let them tell us that we are not ready for a united Africa. With the citizens, we are ready to unite, to come together. So let us now move on to hear from Mama Africa Excellence Ambassador Dr. Alikana Chiomboliko. Of course, in the previous session, I tried to share a video of Mama Alikana, but the video was not okay. Now let us move to hear from Mama Africa Excellence Ambassador Dr. Alikana Chiomboliko. Then I will come to other speaker like Professor Pierre Lumumba. We heard from Brian Kagolo, Julius Malema, Miamo Mutre, Prime Minister of Barbados. Let's now move to Mama Africa Excellence Ambassador Dr. Alikana Chiomboliko.
My name is Arikana Chiumbori. I was born in Zimbabwe, some little village called Chivu. Came to this country to go to college on the first degree in general chemistry and a master's in organic chemistry, went on to medical school. Then did a residency in general surgery and family medicine, practiced medicine for 25 years until one night. Around 3 a.m., a phone call comes in and says, Doc, the African Union ambassador to the United States has resigned. She was going to be running for president of her country, and that we would want you to be the next African Union ambassador to the United States. Now keep in mind, I am a scientist through and through. So who in their right mind would want me to become an ambassador in Washington? I thought that was a joke and it was laughable. Well, I fought it for about 6 months, but because being an African, after a while I had to listen to my elders. So I figured, okay, if you think you're putting a joke on me, the joke is on you, because I'm going to only go to Washington for 6 months and then I'll come back. And I'll tell my elders that I tried, but I couldn't do it. But something happened during the first 4 to 5 months. And mind you, I'm staying in a hotel because I knew I wasn't going to get into a contract, renting or buying, that I wasn't going to last. But what was very disturbing was the disrespect that was so blatant. I would be sitting in meetings initially, because as a doctor, you're always a doctor no matter where you are. And I thought it was really quite humorous sitting with all these big diplomats, and here I am, a medical doctor, and I'm supposed to be useful. I'm busy diagnosing them, you got a thyroid condition, you are bipolar, and I got a pill for you. I'm not really paying attention to the deliberations, because I don't think politicians accomplish much anyway. So it was more important to diagnose them and their medical conditions. But every now and then somebody will say something and I'm like, wait just a minute, did they just say that? And one particular event, there was a whole team of African ministers and one particular leader of a particular department in Washington started raising their voice and screaming and yelling at them. You Africans, you will never speak with one voice. This document over here is going to be a piece of paper 20 years from now. I said, okay. So we got all the ministers here. Somebody say something. It wasn't my show. I was like third. You know how you sit, you got your team leader, and then according to rank, I was number 3. So clearly I wasn't supposed to speak. I waited for those who were supposed to speak. They did not. More and more of those situations became apparent to me. And I remember 5 months into my stay in Washington, I called home and I said, well, you know what, guys, I'm going to hang around a little bit longer. There were a few, you know what, that needed a good kicking. And that I was going to hang around until they ran me out of Dodge, and that's exactly what happened. The disrespect is not just for the Africans on the continent. The disrespect is for black people around the world. The abuse is not just for Africans on the continent. The abuse is for black people wherever you find us. I'm going to share with you some basic facts. You see, our story is a simple one. Our story is of truth and facts, which are two constants that do not change. And all we need to do is give the world an overdose of our truth and insist on it. As we speak today, I'm going to take you back centuries, long before the children of Africa were taken out of Africa as slaves. There was some serious resistance when the occupiers from the West came to Africa, contrary to what some might think. They didn't just give up their children, but the fighting began long before slavery. And the resistance was those who led them, the majority of them, their heads, as we speak today, are sitting in jars in Europe. Are you aware of that? Our leaders, our ancestors who fought the war sitting in jars through our sea to come to Africa and talk to us about human rights. But what's even more disturbing is that we entertain them and we don't remind them of these skeletons in their closet. As we speak today, the priceless artifacts that they stole from all over Africa are sitting in their museums throughout Europe. And when you and I, when we visit Europe, we pay to see what belongs to us. Evidence of theft, evidence of murder on display in plain sight. As we speak today, black people are listed as 3/5 of a human being in the US Constitution. As we speak today, the redlining continues. As we speak today, African countries are being made to pay ridiculous interest rates on loans that they should not be paying for. As we speak today, reparations are due. Everybody else has been given reparations, expect us. The question then becomes, what is wrong with this picture? Why aren't you and I standing up and demanding that what is right must be done? I can tell you why. Because no other race would stand for a minute what is being done to us. How long do you think a finger of a British soldier lasts in Zimbabwe? How long do you think a thumb of a German soldier lasts in Namibia? Not even a minute. They would storm in, kill hundreds, if not thousands of people just to recover that one finger? Why is it that we are unable to come together and speak our truth and demand that what needs to be done must be done? It's because they defeated us where it matters the most, which is the mind. It started with the missionaries in Africa long before slavery. They were sent by the Roman Catholic Church to subdue the Africans, make them believe that when you get slapped, turn the other cheek, and that your riches are in heaven. So by the time they followed with the colonizers to rape and rape Africa, we were already brainwashed. We were meant to believe everything African was bad and undesirable, and everything European was better. And the same brainwashing continued as our children were taken out of Africa enslaved. It continued on the plantations, color gradations, light-skinned versus dark-skinned, field workers versus kitchen workers. To this day, we suffer from the legacy of slavery and the legacy of colonization. For how long are we going to continue to suffer from this affliction? For it is singularly the reason why we are not able to come together just like other races and nationalities have done in this melting pot that is the United States of America. When you ask for the voices of the Irish Americans loud and clear, Jewish Americans loud and clear, German Americans, Italian Americans, Chinese Americans, Indian Americans, their voices are loud and clear. But when you ask for the voices of us black people, you might as well go to the graveyard, because we are missing in action. We were taught, we were brainwashed into not even loving ourselves as individuals, let alone each other. We were taught not to trust one another. We were taught not to believe that my brother can, my sister can, but somebody else who doesn't look like you and I is better. The question I have for all of you, just close your eyes and think about your children, your grandchildren. Is this the world you want to leave behind for them? If the answer is no, then you need to have a serious conversation with the image in the mirror. Because it is the image in the mirror that must change. It is the image in the mirror that must understand that you are sick from this affliction of the legacy of slavery. You are not sick at home. You are not sick in the doctor's waiting room. You are not sick in the hospital ward. You are sick in the intensive care. How long are we going to continue to support other people's agendas? Those who stood up to fight during the civil rights movement, during the Pan-African days in Africa, civil rights in the United States, they were all silenced. We are emerging out of a period of 20 to 30 years where just nothing is going on. We are all fast asleep. When are we going to wake up? Reverend Al Sharpton is saying, the time to wake up is now. Reparations now. We know all the companies that benefited from slavery. We have their name. We have the list. They must pay. As we speak, many have pledged their contributions. Guess what's going to happen, my brothers and sisters? Because we are not organized, we will never realize those funds. and they will hide behind, oh, they're disorganized. They don't know what they're doing. I am now going to be asking Reverend Al Sharpton to lead us as we demand those reparations. We need to register a global Pan-African fund that can make sure that we have development in black communities where it belongs. Those funds must be organized. Those funds must be paid for. Reparations for black people now. No more shall we continue to be abused. No more shall they continue to exploit our Africa. What is in Africa is our birthright, and we are going home to take it. No more shall we be told Africa is a diseased and dying continent because they are going to Africa in droves and telling you to not go there. So this moment is calling for unity of purpose. And before I leave this platform, I'm going to ask all of you to take a moment. If you love your children, if you love your grandchildren and their future, to have a serious conversation with Image in the Mirror. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. I thank you.
Yes, that is Mama Africa, Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Alikanachi Omboli Kwao, our family, friend, fellow Africans. She's spoken, courageous, and she has anxious to see changes in the continent of Africa. So let us move to Professor Piero Lumumba right now. We are going to hear from Professor Piero Lumumba also. Mama Africa has called a unity. All African Pan-Africanists are calling for a unity of this continent because without unity, we are going nowhere. So let us move to Professor Piero Lumumba.
Because they'll not be projected. But if you can see, first of all, I want to agree with the Honorable Minister. I've done two pictorials. One of them is described as Africa at the dinner table. And if you look at Africa at the dinner table, Africa is on a plate and it is meat. And the diners at the dinner table are France, the United Kingdom, the United States, the European Union, the Chinese, and progressively the Arabs. And my second picture is the African hotspots. It's not visible from there. But if you look at Africa today and you make a clean sweep with your mind, there are different conflicts of different intensity in Somalia, in northern Mauritania, in northern Mali, in Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, Guinea-Bissau, in the Cameroons, in South Sudan, and one can go on and on. And there is a sense in which Africa has always been alive to the question of interference. I will refer this audience, particularly those who are starting, to take time and read the 32 odd speeches that were made in the month of May 1963 by the then heads of states and government of independent African states, the 32 of them. And there are two speeches that I want to isolate for this presentation. One was by David Dacko of Central African Republic. And in thanking Emperor Haile Selassie and Kwame Nkrumah on that day, he said that we must never forget that the colonial power has not left us. We must recognize that he did not go willingly. And if we don't check them, they'll come back again. And what would little Central African Republic do against them? Today, He is right. Today, if we remember the activities of France and how they propped up the regime of Jean-Bedel Bokassa, he was right. Today, as the Honorable Minister has indicated, Africa remains the only continent in the world that is referred to in these terms, Anglophone, to mean that we are a sphere of our erstwhile colonizers. About 2 weeks ago, there was a meeting of the Commonwealth in London, England, and a friend of mine who is an Anglophile sent me the photograph very gleefully, saying this is a meeting of 53 equal states. I told him, no. If it was so, why is it that the leadership of the Commonwealth is hereditary rather than rotational? In other words, in the minds of the British, her former colonies are still under her tutelage. And I want to submit to us that in the minds of what I'll call the conceptual West, they think they have a divine duty to instruct Africans what to do. And in the minds of many African leaders, they think that they have a divine duty to accept what they are told. That, in my view, is what the Honorable Minister was talking about, the mindset. And this is something that has been examined. We have seen France and its very pernicious presence in Africa. We know what they did in Burkina Faso against Thomas Sankara. We know what they did in Mali or the Sudan against Modibo Keita or against Sékou Touré in Guinea. Pernicious to the core. The Portuguese, we know what battles had to be fought in that area. And let me put this very bluntly. When the former leader of Portugal, Marcelo Caetano, was asked, why can you not allow the colonies to gain independence? This is what he said in substance. As I have examined world history over the years, the following have emerged. That the Caucasians have been responsible for monumental discoveries in the development of man. So have the Chinese, so have the Arabs. But the Africans have been responsible for nothing. They are only fit as hewers of wood and drawers of water. And I want to submit to you who are present here that in the conceptual West's unguarded moments, that is what they think. And that is how they relate to Africa. So the whole idea that they will interfere is something that they think is their God-given duty. I said there were two speeches in 1940. The speech by Kwame Nkrumah. He said, we must live here with one army, with one command. We must live here with one currency. We must live here with one currency, one country. I do not know where its capital will be, but I suggest Leopoldville or Bangui. Other leaders may have their thoughts. Kwame was right, but who listened to him? Several years down the line, and I've said it in my paper, there were coups d'etats which were engineered, there were mutinies which were engineered, and other forms of destabilization. And I want to believe that the person who actually said it very well in the 1980s was the former American President Ronald Reagan. He said, the United States of America does what is in her best interest. And I agree with him. Does Africa do what is in her best interest? Do African leaders do what is in the best interest of Africa? Interference will be there in very blatant and brazen ways and in subtle ways. I've always asked, until very recently, how many African countries manufactured bullets? Very few. Until very recently, how many African countries, in fact, how many African countries manufacture jet fighters? How many African countries are involved in the arms industry? Some of the leading conceptual West countries which pontificate to us about prizes, peace prizes, are the leading manufacturers of landmines. And if you look at their foreign exchange earners, it is the military and security items. So they say with their mouths, what do they not believe in their hearts? In Kiswahili we say, vita vya panzi furaha ya kunguru. That when the locusts are fighting, it is the joy of the hawk. Because when they kill each other, they get the food easily, dead. It is in the best interest, I dare submit, without fear of contradiction, that the elite in the conceptual West does not want Africa to stabilize, despite their assertion to the contrary. And you'll see it in every country because conflict is a major industry. Today, you look at South Sudan and the many peace conferences that are being held, but if you ask who supplies the arms, who provides safe havens, it is the conceptual West. And when I use the term conceptual West, I'm saying that it extends to countries which are geographically not in the West, like Australia or Canada. So I'm submitting in answer to your question, Joe, that interference is there, and it is part, to use this old cliche, of the neo-colonial project. The neo-colonial project requires that Africa must remain within the sphere of influence of these states. Today, if you look at the United Kingdom, which has left Europe, one would have thought that those are their cousins and that they should sit in comfort with them. You will now see their involvement being de-emphasized in Europe and their interest and appetite growing towards the Commonwealth. Because in the Commonwealth, they are the major domos. They'll tell us what to do. In Europe, they have to grapple with the Germans and the French, and they don't like it. That is the unspoken bit of it. The French also are in Europe, but the Germans are too strong, and they don't like it. So they want to hold Côte d'Ivoire, Gabon, and tell them what to do. I do not know how many of you saw the press conference that was attended by President Macron of France and Nana Addo of Ghana. And when Nana Addo spoke as an African should, you could see the body language of the French president. How dare this man speak this way? In other words, I'm saying that interference is the mother's milk of European economies. But to answer your second question, they have their own recruits who Professor Philip Nying'oro will be speaking here. To use the old vocabulary of those days, they have the people you call their comprador bourgeoisie. You must remember. The comprador bourgeoisie are Africans with black faces, but essentially they are doing the bidding of these powers. They are the ones you'll find them in different spheres. And they will be present. They are in your cabinet, but they are actually representatives of the foreign intelligence agencies of those countries. We know this. If you look at the declassified papers from the United States, we now know that some of leading cabinet ministers in many African countries were working for the CIA or some Western agencies. So you are sitting in cabinet, and in these days of the mobile phone, they are possibly texting their masters in Europe and America. So interference is also exacerbated by these comprador bourgeois for their own benefits. And it has never changed, Honorable Minister. In the early days of slavery, they gave some of the chiefs mirrors and alcohol. Today, what they give them are flats in Paris or in Dubai. And that is what makes them undermine Africa. The third mode of interference is through institutions. Look at the competition as it is now. There is a new entrant into the market that is called China. China is very subtle. Many people wrote the obituary of Rwanda in 1994. 20 years down the line, it has been demonstrated that Africans can actually do it. Between 1983 and 1987, I think Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso also demonstrated that it can be done. We saw in Somalia, despite their problem. So my prescription is African unity. Africa must now begin to negotiate initially in terms of blocks, SADC, ECOWAS, East African Community, and ultimately as African Union. And lo and behold, we must do it. And I've always said this cliche, we must do it, because if we don't do it, we will be done. Thank you.
Yes, that is Professor PLO Lumumba. It's my hope that my dear lovely family, friend, fellow Africans, and all of you who are here in this platform, you heard the truth from our Pan-Africanist. We started with the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Motre. She spoken very well in the African Union. Then we came to Julius Stella Malema when he was in Ghana. We went to other Pan-Africanists like Kagolo and others. We came to Marikana Chiomboli Kwao. Now we end up with Professor PLO Lumumba. And of course, we should not forget uh, Joshua Maponga, the farmer of thought. But all in all, the aim is to find best solutions and to have a single idea about the issue of unity. So these lectures will continue as time goes to share with we Africans to find the best way on how we can unite. Today, if we are saying Africa, we are going to unite, who will be our president? Who will be our ministers? So I think we need to come up with strategies on how we can get our leaders, how we can unite, and in where or in which sector we are going to unite as Africans. So, brothers and sisters, thank you for being part of this movement. Thank you for being part of this revolution. Thank you for taking your time to watch this video, to watch this live streaming. To those who have liked our video, all of you, thank you, because we have done a great job of uniting the people of Africa. Yes, maybe we are few in this platform, but as time goes, we'll become more and others will join us in the near future so that all of us can have a common vision and common idea on how we can unite this continent. Family has heard from Professor Pierre Lumumba. As long as we are divided, this interference will continue because those who are interfering us, they're interfering us not because they want to help us, they want to make sure that they have controls of our natural resources. And that's why they have decided to unite in their homes and to come to Africa. And right now they have succeeded to put their military bases here in the country of Africa to threaten us and to make we Africans to fear them. And that's what they're doing. But in all, this can come to an end if we Africans we can decide to come together. There's a difficulty for Africa to unite, as the professor said. We have leaders, ministers who are working for the Western agencies. We know them, and because they're in the pocket of these politicians, we cannot do anything to them. But if we are so united, we can tell them face to face that what you are doing is betrayal of our struggle. What you are doing is betraying of our motherland, of our continent, Africa. So brothers and sisters, after that, I have no more to share. Let me say thank you for being part of this movement, for being part of this platform. Thank you for taking your time. If you're new, make sure that you subscribe to join this big family of Make Africa Great. And if you have already subscribed, please you help us to share this message to other Africans here in the continent and to those who are in the diaspora. And also, you may like the video. Tell everyone that this is the time for Africa or Africans to come together and unite. But we need also to preach peace, love, while we are talking about unity. Peace and love is very important. So after that, let me salute you and say bye-bye. See you next time. Thank you.